Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend and coach, John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Hey, Jim, I'm good. It's a beautiful sunny day in
Is it?
Michigan.
Yeah. Nice and warm. I'm glad I'm off screen here, but I'm going to be honest, full disclosure, I'm wearing shorts. And they're not the proper Pentecostal camp length. I'll just let you know that. It's up to you, whatever you picture. But I'm at our Saline campus today doing our week long missions trip. So it's 80
Hmm.
some degrees and sunny outside. And I'm sitting here in the cry room of the Saline campus. I'm the quietest thing that's probably ever happened in this room, from
Uh,
what I understand. So good to be with you today, though. Fun
yeah,
to talk a little bit. Tell us about today's episode. 244 episodes in. What's on your mind?
yeah. I wanted to kick off a two-parter, Jim,
Yeah,
today on the subject of 8 church trends in 2024.
good.
Um, and I'd like us today to look at four, and then next week we'll look at four additional ones. I'd like to start with a story, though, real quick. I don't
Yeah,
know if this is true or not, but a Sunday school teacher decided to have her young class memorize Psalm 23. She gave the kids a month to learn the 6 verses, and there's a little kid named Billy who was excited about the task, but I think he was ADD. He just couldn't remember. He couldn't remember the psalm.
right.
Uh, and I mean, after practicing for an entire month, he could only get past the first line.
Hmm.
And so on the day that the kids were reciting Psalm 23, Billy's turn came up and he steps up to the mic and he says, "The Lord is my shepherd, and that's all I need to know."
Yeah,
Yeah. And I thought about that story and I thought,
yeah,
man, wouldn't that be great if that's all I needed to know about being a pastor in 2024? If I just had to
yeah,
know one thing,
right.
my life would be immeasurably better.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
uh and we all know, pastoring in 2024 is not like it was pre-pandemic.
no.
And I think most pastors are out of denial
Hmm.
with that, Jim, that they know the landscape has changed, um, and they know the playing field is just different now in
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. And so I thought it might be a good idea for us just to talk about some trends that we're seeing
yeah,
today, and some of them won't be new trends. Funny, some things never change, and we'll learn some of that in
yeah.
uh, in both of these sessions today and then next week. But I'd like to just jump into four things that we're seeing, and just love to hear your feedback on
Right on.
on
Yeah,
each one of them, if that's okay with you.
love it. Hit me.
All right, so here's the trend number one, and that's this: pastoral ministry creates this invisible pull toward the black hole of the micro
Hmm.
at the expense of the macro. And we'll explain that in a minute.
Hmm.
There's this gravitational black hole pull into the tactical
Hmm.
at the expense of the strategic.
Yeah,
Um, that trend is not new. It's a very persistent trend. I think pastors have struggled with this for a long time. You're invisibly pulled into thinking about door locks and alarm systems and roof leaks and
yeah,
storage rooms, often at the expense of casting vision and working on strategy and developing your leaders. Um, I've learned this, that if I'm not intentional about the strategic, the micro always takes
yes.
over, always takes over, always dominates me. Um, we've said this probably a dozen or more times on this podcast in 5 years, but it bears repeating. We have to figure out how to spend more time working on our ministry and less time working in our ministry.
Yeah,
Working on our ministry
yeah.
is the strategic part of what we do.
Mhm.
Working in our ministry is the day-to-day tactical items that need to
Yeah.
be worked on. So give me your thoughts on this first trend, Jim.
Yeah, I think the phrase that came to mind when you were talking about that is the tyranny of the urgent. You
Mm,
know, Sister Coleslaw shows up again. with the same problem you tried to help her with the last four times she stopped in without an appointment. Demands your time, produces nothing, gives nothing, serves nowhere, but is in pain. And I think as pastors, we want to help Sister Coleslaw, right? I mean,
Right.
we didn't get into this for the money and the fame. We got into to help people. Here's a hurting person. But I think, and we said this before as well, but if minutes were dollars, we would treat them differently because we understand the value of a dollar. In some
Yeah.
ways, even more so than we understand the value of a minute. But the investment of a minute is far outweighs the investment of a dollar when it comes to our ministry. So
Right.
finding the right investments, and there will always be urgent things. No one has ever scheduled their funeral with me 6 months in advance. It's like they just don't plan it like they do weddings, you know. So
Right.
there's going to be a schedule, there's going to be a calendar, and there's going to be urgent things that are going to tyrannize that. But if that's our norm, we will never get to the things that really only we can do. Somebody else can trim the bushes, pick up the trash. Somebody else can unclog the toilet, and call so and so, even visit so and so. We should be discipling people to do lots of things in the ministry so we can devote ourselves to, as Paul said to Timothy, the work of an evangelist. Now, you're
Yeah.
not an evangelist, but I think what he means by that is you have a message that you are anointed to speak. And if you don't speak it, it doesn't get spoken. We see this in the book of Acts where they're waiting on tables, which is wonderful. These are people in need. God
Yes.
loves them. He doesn't want widows and orphans to go unfed. But that's when we delegate. We delegate the things that are meaningful but repetitive to people
Right.
because lots of people want to get in the game and we need to get out of that game so we can get back to coaching the team and not just being playing every part on the field. We should be the coach of everybody on the field as soon as we can. And I know when you're first starting out as a church planter, you're pastoring a smaller ministry. Yes, everything is your responsibility, and no, not everything's been delegated. But the sooner you find good people to entrust those things to, the quicker
Right.
you can start working on the larger things of your ministry, which produce the long fruit that we're trying to produce.
That's right. And it really kind of begs the question for me, what's at the root of this?
Mm, yeah,
Why?
good
Why
question.
is why do we behave like that? And
Mm,
I'm not sure I have all the answers. I think maybe part of it is fear related. Like if I
okay.
don't talk to uh, Sister Coleslaw or I don't deal with this scenario, um, what'll happen? Who is she going to
Yeah,
go talk to and say bad things about me to,
yeah,
and your imagination can run wild. So I think
yeah,
there's sometimes it's fear-based. I think
yeah.
other times it's maybe imposter syndrome. We feel like if
Hmm.
I don't know how to vision, I don't know how to be
Oh,
strategic. And
right.
so because I'm not comfortable in that space, I'm more, most of us human beings are drawn to comfort, right? So we
Sure. Yeah.
start with the
Yeah.
things that are easy in our world, which isn't a good strategy for leadership, by the way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I wonder if part of it is that
Yeah.
where we don't feel we have that skill set. I was talking with the pastor. This was last week, I think, Jim,
Mm,
and he's just had some stuff going on in his world, and
yeah.
he's been less available to everybody.
Hmm.
And he said, "My church is growing. How is that possible?" Well, he says
Yeah.
it's very humbling, that
Yeah.
I'm because of what's going on in my world, I haven't been as available as I used to be, and things seem to be doing better. Um,
Yes.
and I wonder if part of it
Yeah.
is he's budgeting his time more on things that only he can do, like you said earlier. And
Yeah.
and so, Pastor, if you're listening or watching today, I think if you find yourself sucked into the tactical all the time at the expense
Hmm.
of the strategic, the things that are important but not urgent, um, a couple of questions to ask yourself maybe is what's at the root? Is it, am I, what am I,
Yeah.
here's a good question. What am I afraid of?
Hmm.
And why am I avoiding the strategic part of my calling? And is it fear? Is it a lack of knowledge or a lack of train? I think people have the ability to be strategic and
Yeah.
vision in their area of gifting. I think it's
Hmm.
concentrated, focused time thinking in your area
Yeah.
of passion in pain and strength or
Yeah.
proficiency.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the creativity comes. That's where the dreaming comes. That's where, so, so that's this first trend. I think since I've been a pastor a million years ago till today is one that I think is this is just a trend that we see that we think needs to be intercepted and
Yes.
dealt with in a
Yeah.
different way.
If I could have one thought too, I think those were frightening days. The COVID stuff, because it wasn't just
Yes, they
COVID.
were.
COVID would have been bad enough. Now, if it's masks or not masks, which one, Pastor? Tell me which side you're on, so I can tell you you're an idiot and leave your church. And if you
Hmm.
don't, then I'll tell somebody that you said that, and then they'll call you an idiot and they'll leave your church. What's your thought on the racial situation? What's your thought on the political situation? What's your thought on? I think
Yep.
it's like we wasted so much time and energy on real issues, but real issues that became um, divisive, that became toxic. The
Yep.
conversations we should have had, but we didn't want to listen to anybody else besides our own echo chambers that we found on our online forums, because we couldn't talk to people, didn't have interaction with our neighbors or people of different persuasions. So we just, the algorithm made us believe we were right and everybody else was wrong. And I think we're afraid sometimes to confront issues. But I'll just say this, in the things that God hates, the word coward is on that list, right? And it's not like God hates cowards, but what happens is there's a cowardly leader doesn't lead; they follow everybody, and so we go nowhere. Whoever
Right.
speaks the loudest is now in charge. So if you're an ordained leader, God has placed you there, giving you gifts and grace to lead and to serve your people that way. It's actually okay to say, I don't care if you wear a mask or not. I care if you love Jesus. I mean, that is a legitimate. I don't care if you're a
Yeah.
Republican, a Democrat, Independent, tree hugging, leaf flicking. You know what I mean? Toad hugger. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is Jesus is your king, no matter who your president or your governor or your senator is. We've
There you
got to
go.
make the main things the plain things, and the plain things the main things. And if you can't get along with that, then my dad had a saying: "Don't let the door hit you, where the good Lord split you." Like there's, it's okay to say we're not here to make everybody happy. We are your servant, but that cannot make you our master. We have to obey the Lord. Join
Yep.
us or don't, but we have to obey the Lord. So
Yep.
I think telling people no for a good reason. No, I can't come to Billy's T-ball game every Saturday for 8 hours because
Yeah.
if I were to do that, I would give up my sermon preparation time that's desperate for the whole congregation. Just makes
Yep.
sense. People understand, I think, if you make sense, if you have a biblical reason for not being at whatever they want you to be at, right? People
There you go.
people may be more reasonable. People, by and large, are more reasonable when there's a good reason than you might imagine. So give them a good reason,
Yep.
a well thought out reason, and then put in the big rocks first, then the little rocks, then the sand, then the water, right? That's
Yep.
Stephen Covey's illustration on priority. So good
That's
good
right.
point, John. I love that.
Yeah. Here's the second trend, Jim, that
Yeah.
health is measured differently
Yes.
now than it was pre-pandemic. Attendance uh, is not unimportant
Sure.
as an indicator of health, but in 2024, it's not the only indicator of how healthy your church is.
Yes.
And perhaps it shouldn't be the top indicator.
Yes.
One of the reasons I don't like it being the top indicator is because of the small control you have over that
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we set ourselves up for real frustration
Yeah.
when we think that's the top priority. And when we really come to grips with how little control we have over that, it becomes a real problem for us.
Yeah.
I don't think attendance captures the full picture of organizational health. We've seen small churches that are healthy and vibrant. We've
Yeah.
seen churches that are not healthy and vibrant. Same with larger churches. Larger churches that are healthy and vibrant, and larger churches that are not healthy and not vibrant. Um, I think you could get your attendance numbers up next week, this coming Sunday,
Yeah.
if you announce free pizza
Sure.
for the service. Yeah, just we're gonna serve free pizza to everybody. You'll have a big crowd.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're healthy. So there are other barometers, there are other things to look at, and I think that's very context specific for a church. It's not one size fits all. You have to,
Yeah.
you really have to get on your knees with your team and say, God, what do you want us to pay attention to in
Yeah.
terms of
It's
what
good.
we measure?
That's good.
Um,
Yeah.
I think every church needs to do that for themselves because
Yeah.
if you compare yourself to the church down the street, well, these are the things they're doing, so that's going to be what's important to us. Again, you're
Yeah.
setting yourself up for frustration. So that being said, I
Yeah.
mean, here's some of the other measurements that churches are looking at
Good.
um, in our world, in our network. Though some of them are they're looking at non. Here, let me give you some non-number
Yeah.
indicators of health. First of all, trust. Is there a high level of trust between the team and between the
Yeah.
team and the congregation?
Yeah.
Um, is there clarity of vision? Do we all know where we're headed? What's the end zone look like?
Yeah.
How do we communicate?
Hmm.
There's a big one.
Yeah.
Um,
Huge.
a lot of organizations. I think every organization I've ever worked in, Jim, in the marketplace or in the church world, no matter its size, the level of great communication has been one of the bigger
Yeah.
challenges for those
Yeah.
organizations.
And by that, you mean people communicating with each other, leadership,
Yeah,
vision, just not being a great speaker from the stage. That's not what you mean by communicating. It's
you're right.
intra-team communications. Absolutely.
100% right. And
Yeah.
closely aligned to that is how do we
Yeah.
manage conflict? Or
Yes.
do we even allow for conflict? Do we even allow for differing opinions or debate over ideas? And so some
Yeah.
churches, those are some of the non-number
Yeah.
types of things that they're looking at that they're saying, okay, as we get better here, we think that bodes well for our long-term health. Some of the numeric ones are, how many people are in groups? How
Yeah.
many people are serving in the intersection of their passion, pain,
Yeah.
and proficiency?
Yeah.
Um, these are some of the, salvations, baptisms, those types of things
Yeah.
are part are
Yeah.
part two. I kind of like the baptism metric um, because to me that somebody's now taken the next step.
Right.
Our
Right.
friend Paul Firestein, who's part of our team, says that's when you put the team jersey on when you get
Right.
baptized.
Right on.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
what
All
do you
in.
think about this second trend, Jim, about how we measure
Yeah.
health?
I don't think I have anything really to add to that. I think you're right on. I think the easiest ones to measure, the most obvious gauge on our dashboard is square foot and square feet, programs, dollars, attendance. But yeah, none of those things speak to health. I don't even know that Jesus focused on any of those things.
Right,
Dollars, square feet of number of ministries and the number of people in crowds. I mean, we numbered some crowds, but only to show how big the miracle was that he fed them. It usually says
right.
multitudes or so. Yeah, I if the Great Commission is discipleship, then we have to look at other gauges on our dashboard, like baptism, like engaging what God created them to be and being that in environments to make them make sense within your church, and
Yep.
around your church. I think those are much better. And I'll say this, I that may take more time to get going, but in the long run, that bears a lot more fruit than the world's biggest popsicle. I'm going to break bricks with my face and I light them on fire and I'm going to tear a phone book. I'm going to, those are great for drawing a crowd
Hmm.
for evangelism, maybe, but you can't
Yeah.
build a church off the world's biggest popsicle. A freak show is not a church. A three-ring circus, P.T. Barnum circus, yes, it will draw a large crowd, but then everybody goes home and says, what a great show. I wonder what they have for us next week. And if you make your church a weekly
Good point.
product, don't be surprised when people come as consumers with an opinion about your product. But if
Yeah.
you're building a family, if you're building a room of trust, if you're building, there's fathers and mothers with sons and daughters environments, those take time. But sons and daughters become fathers and mothers. And people who go to the movies don't even become friends. So if you put on a show every week, then you'll get what shows get. Someone with their
Yeah.
favorite seat. Maybe they'll high five the guy next to him when they score a goal. But if it's a movie, there's a certain dynamic. If it's a season ticket holder sporting event, there's a certain dynamic. If it's my family room, there's a very different dynamic. So I think the sporting event might get them in, or the movie might get them in the room. The sporting event might get them to know the people around them. But we're really trying to move people towards good, solid relationships within the church, churches within the church. All the
Yep.
cells, the millions of cells in the body of Christ are where we should be directing people. And how do you measure that? And I think, like you're saying, How many go to a group like that? How many have engaged who they are and are giving it away in a meaningful way? Those are
That's
far
right.
more important measurements. Yeah.
I think so. And what you just said about relationships really lends to this third trend that
Yeah.
I want to share, and that is
Yeah.
people are lonely.
Yes, they are.
And I want
Yes,
to
they
pause
are.
for dramatic effect. I mean, people are lonely.
Yeah.
Not new, but I think truer now than ever in my lifetime.
Yes.
Um, and if it is true, that means being strategic about creating opportunities for deep heart connection with people.
Yeah.
Jim, especially newer people.
Yes.
When somebody comes to your church, the church that you pastor, yeah, they want your church to be friendly, but after about 3 weeks, they're looking for friends.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, when I was the campus pastor in Washington, Michigan, it seems like a million years ago. It was about 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we focused like a laser on connecting new people.
Hmm.
Uh, every one of our leaders was expected to be on point with that. We taught about it. We used to do pre-service huddles with all the leaders that day or everybody who was serving. And I would say 80% of those pre-service huddles dealt with being on point
Yeah.
with new or newer guests.
Great.
I mean, we publicly celebrated when we had some good wins with connection. And so we launched that campus with about 75 people, and that included children.
Yeah.
It's about 50 adults, 25 kids, and 12 months later, more than 150 people called that campus their home. Now,
Yeah.
I know, the Lord gets the credit for that. I think
Yeah.
he used this relentless focus on deep heart connection as a contributor
Yeah.
to that growth. I mean, we were
Huge.
scratching an itch.
Yeah.
That itch is deeper and more pervasive now than it's ever been.
Yeah.
What do you think about this third trend, Jim?
But I think again, COVID. I don't think we were. Loneliness has always been a problem to one degree or another. But
Yeah.
everybody got lonely during COVID at one
Yes.
time or another. I didn't get to see my grandkids. I didn't get to see my parents. I didn't get to see my neighbors. We a drive-in movie where we sat in our car and we projected over an AM station our service, but people got to see each other, just see each other. They would weep because they hadn't seen each other in weeks. It was crazy. So I think that isolation, that sense of I'm alone, lonely versus I truly feel like a unicorn on an island of goats. Like I am different than, and no one really knows me. I think it's a terrible environment for bad things to grow, and for us to, as the church, say no one, you you will not be alone, and we won't allow you to be lonely because we're going to overwhelm you with kindness. One of the ladies at our church, her name's Pat Mossman, and she's the hugging lady. If you don't know her name, she's the hugging lady. Every Sunday, you get a hug from Pat Mossman. She stands there and hugs everybody. COVID killed her. She hugged herself as people walked in. She just had to hug somebody, you know. But and I can't tell you the number of people when I ask them, like on a work day, we're here right now doing some work, and why Freedom Center? Why did you come to our church? Well, we're looking for a church. We walked in the door and we just felt so. And Pat is always a part of that story. We just
Yeah.
felt so at home. First Sunday, we felt at home. What made you feel at home? Was it a song you hadn't heard or a brilliant sermon from a gifted orator? Like, nope. Miss Pat and her hug in the foyer. We knew that we came back. She remembered our name. She gave us a hug, like she missed us all week, and that's why we
Yeah.
connected to Freedom Center Church. And it's
Yeah.
it's a small thing, but it's not. It's
Right.
I'm important here. I'm valued here. I'm welcomed here, and I agree, John. I think not only did you get those extra people from the 75 to the 150, they were a part of something. They weren't just
That's
going to
right.
something. They were a part of something because somebody welcomed them into that circle. So
Yeah.
we
And,
have the
and
solution to loneliness.
yeah, and one of the outputs of that, Jim, I think that was connected to this effort to just be relational. We had 85% serve rate.
Wow, that's great.
And
Yeah.
and I think the connectivity was such an important piece of that puzzle. One of my favorite stories in that one year I served was we were it was an Easter Sunday, and there was a lady that was brand new who was in the worship center sitting in the back, and I could tell that she had been crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I went up to her and started to talk, and one of our, not, she wasn't even a leader, one of the people in our congregation, we had this driven so deeply into the
Hmm.
congregation that they understood this now. One of our congregants came up into my peripheral vision, and I
Yeah.
said, and I introduced her to
Hmm.
this lady. I said, here, here's her name was, I think, Sue. Here's Sue, and
Yeah.
and this person from our congregation said, "Hey, Sue, do you mind if I sit with you today?"
Yeah.
And I'm doing cartwheels on
Right.
on the inside, because
Home
I
run.
didn't ask her to do that, but because we made such a big deal out of it, she began to she adopted that, like, and so it
Right.
became this
Right.
thing that was not
Mm.
system, Jim, it was DNA, if
Yes.
that,
Yeah. It's
if that
culture.
makes sense.
Right. That's part of who we are and what we do here. Yeah.
Right. And so to deal with this third trend, I think relational connectivity has to become DNA
Yeah.
for our pastor friends who are
Yeah.
listening and watching, and your leaders, and
Yeah.
ultimately your congregation. Um, Let me give you one more, Jim, because I know we're bumping up against time here.
Yeah.
Here's a fourth trend. Your team, uh, your younger team especially,
Yeah.
want and need regular FaceTime with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, my first go around with pastoral ministry back in the 80s and 90s was marked by a major rookie leadership mistake.
Okay.
You ready for it?
I am.
I spent I spent way too much time trying to get unfaithful people
Yeah.
faithful,
Yeah.
and way too little time pouring into those who were faithful.
Yeah.
Now, what do I know now that I didn't know 30 plus years ago? That was a losing strategy.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
it's a losing strategy to spend more time with problem people than it is to spend time with people who are on board and rowing with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so focus like a laser on developing your team, your staff.
Yeah.
You'll receive a disproportionate amount of great results in return. So, I go back to the 8 years ago when I was the campus pastor. I spent 90 minutes of one-on-one FaceTime with each team lead every month.
Yeah.
Now
Every
they
month.
were
Yeah.
all working in the marketplace, so
Yeah.
that's what they could afford time-wise. And I would spend that time, and we would talk about wins, we would talk through challenges.
Yeah.
I would ask them every month, what are you dreaming about in
Hmm.
your area of responsibility?
That's great.
Are you still having fun
Yeah.
in the
Great
role?
question.
How can I help you? Who have you added to your team since our last meeting? What can I be praying with you about? Same
Yeah.
6 or 7 questions every month.
Love it.
And when I exited that role and we surveyed the team leaders, we asked them, what was the most helpful thing to you in the first
Hmm.
year of this campus? Every one
Yeah.
of them said 90
That
minutes
meeting.
of FaceTime with John
Yeah.
every month.
Wow.
Pastor, you've got control over that. You
Yeah.
have full control. Take people to breakfast and have that meeting.
Yeah.
Feed them lunch. They have to eat, right? And so
Yeah.
utilize easier, well-fitting times to get in front of and with your leaders. They want time with you. And I
Yeah.
would say to you that it's time well spent. So Jim, that's what I've got.
I
This
love it.
fourth trend, I don't know if you want to talk to it or not, but then wrap us up.
Yeah. No, I think again, we say this all the time that, what was the thing that really changed your life? What was the thing you like best? Why are you still here serving the way you are? It's funny that no one mentioned things we put a lot of energy into. Like, and again, the sermon, I'm not saying sermons shouldn't have a lot of energy put into them,
That's
but it's
right.
interesting but you believing in them and giving them value by giving them time actually meant more to them than any of the sermons that you preached to them that
That's
same
right.
month. And there's more time. You probably put 30 minutes, 4 30-minute sermons, 5 30-minute sermons into them during that time. So there's more time spent preaching to them. But by asking them 6 questions and listening to them, they said, that's actually what changed my life. And what's
Yep.
funny, you didn't have to prepare for that conversation. You didn't have to make notes. You have to study 8 hours for that conversation. You didn't have to That was just you being a father, if you will, being a concerned brother, being whatever your role was, but being their pastor. And that we have to invest in our people. Our people have to know that they have value to us and that we're here to listen to them and love them and serve them. I love that. What are you dreaming about? What are your challenges? And holding them accountable to recruiting people by saying, who have you added? They know they're going to
Yeah.
be asked that question every month. They're going to say nobody. Next month, nobody. Man, I better get somebody because John's going to ask me that same question again. So instead of saying you need 5 people a year, and if you don't, you're like, it wasn't. You just asked the question, and they put it on their radar. So I love that. That's brilliant. So I love that wisdom flows from your lips like just water from a hole in a rock, man. That's awesome. So I hope that everybody that's listening today is feeling that sense of these are simple things, but they're incredibly powerful. They're very practical. And I think by maybe adjusting some things, that would be helpful. Now, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to nod your head, say amen, say I should do that. And then most of you aren't going to do anything about it. And this is why. Saying I want to do something about something, I want to lose weight, is not a diet. It's not having a coach. It's not having a workout routine. It's not having a gym membership. It's just a wish. If this conversation is giving you a wish, but you don't yet have a plan, you understand that most of the time, 95% of the time, nothing's going to happen. If this meant something to you and you want it to change, call us. So for
Yeah.
30 minutes, we can walk you through what those 6 questions were. You didn't remember them, but John will remember them. Or one of the team members will remember them. Get a coaching package that lasts for a series of weeks or months so that we can help you develop these habits and the questions to ask yourself and others and get these things from kind of the inspirational filtering left brain to the reflexive, this is who I am, discipled right brain. That's what a coach does. He takes truth and puts handles on it so you can carry it in an applicable and healthy way. So we are here for you. It costs you nothing, like this podcast, the first 30 minutes. If we can help you in any way in 30 minutes, we will. If it takes 30 years, I'll probably be with Jesus, but John will still be here, and we will help any way we can because we believe that inside of you is a grace from God. We want fully expressed that will not have any wouldas, shouldas, or couldas at the end of your race. So God bless you, our dear watchers and listeners, as you continue. Let us help you continue to lead from alignment.